today, we're going to be covering the essential checklist before you take your machine on a ride. What's up, everybody? Braden Adams here with Super ATV, and today we're going to be covering the essentials that you need to be checking on your machine before you take it on the first ride. We're going to be covering the suspension, the engine, the clutching, and a little bit of everything else across the board on the machine before you hit the trails. So we have one of our X3s in the shop here. Obviously, not every machine is going to be identical for what you're going to do when you're checking the oil, checking the suspension components. Across the board, it's going to be very similar for a lot of the year, make, model machines, but everything's going to be a little bit different. So refer to your service manual whenever you are checking any of the following things that we're stating in this video. The first thing that I like to check, it's at the front of the machine. I like to check all the suspension components as well as the steering components. So that's going to include the A-arm bushings, the rack and pinion, the inner ball and socket or inner tie rod, the outer tie rod, wheel bearing, and ball joints. Here's how you're gonna check the rack and pinion as well as the tie rods. You're gonna grab the tire on both sides and you're just gonna wiggle it back and forth. You're not trying to turn it. You're going all the way to the slot point on either side and then going back and forth. And then what you're doing is looking for play on the inner ball and socket as well as the outer tie rod. Another thing you can be checking with the same motion is going to be the A-arm bushings. Now, if you have an A-arm bolt that is loose, it may act like the bushing's loose as well. That's always something you want to go through and check. Double check all the hardware. Not a bad idea to change the hardware. We do offer a full line of hardware kits on superatv.com, and it's our up and running line of product. So we're adding more of those every day. Checking this back and forth. This machine has a little bit of inner ball and socket play, not a ton. It doesn't have a ton of miles on it. So that's how you check the steering components there. The next thing we're gonna check is the ball joints. When you wanna check the ball joints, a lot of times what I do is take my jack handle out of my jack, slide it underneath the tire, and lift up on it. So I just get the machine off the ground enough. And as I'm lifting up, I'm looking at the ball joint to see if there's any up and down movement. Grab the bottom, lift up. And you can almost feel a little bit of slop. These ball joints have just a touch of slop in them. So then in that same motion there, what you're gonna do is grab the top and the bottom of the tire. You're gonna pull out, back and forth. What you're doing there is checking the wheel bearings. So if you have a bunch of in and out movement, you may have a wheel bearing that's bad. Some models, it may be the hub. So Can-Am's a little bit different. The outer diameter of the CV slides into the inner race on the bearing. So you don't typically see a lot of issues with the hub being worn out, causing the wheel bearing to feel like it's loose. But on some of the Polaris models, it tends to be pretty common, especially if you're somebody who's putting a wheel bearing in 25 miles later, it seems like it's loose again. Definitely go through and check the hubs. We also sell those on the website, so make sure you pop over there and check that out. So that kind of covers the suspension up front. Obviously, a few other things that you should check is the shock bushings. You know, make sure your shocks are in good shape. If you have something that has some miles on it, check the springs. We offer tender springs. Check the front differential oil. Definitely refer to the owner's manual, the service manual on when you should be servicing your front differential, but it's always a good idea. Pull the fill plug out, look and see if there's any water in it. See if there's any oil in it, you know, see if it's leaked out. I like to take a straw, you know, just take a straw, drinking straw, shove it in there, put my finger over it, pull it out, and I'll put it on a rag, and I'll just check to see if it looks super dirty. Change it. No reason not to change it early. I'd rather change it early than change it late to where it's already washed all that nastiness into the bearings and cause some premature wear on any of the components inside the differential. Rack and pinion. That's one of those that you need to have the tires on the ground to check. And what you're gonna do is grab the steering wheel and turn it side to side as you're watching. And if the tires aren't moving, but the rack is, a lot of times that means the rack's worn out. We offer a full line of Rack Boss 2.0 rack and pinions for many makes and models. And then kind of in the same vicinity there, the prop shaft. You know, that's something that nobody checks until it's broke. And a lot of times you can easily avoid a prop shaft failure by just checking to see if it's good to go. But what you can do is get in with a pry bar and pry up and down on the U-joints to see if there's any slop. And if there is, we sell U-joints. And we also have a full line of Rhino series prop shafts. We have C series, which converts the U-joint style prop shaft to a CV style prop shaft. It's awesome. You can buy it with a billet carrier or a cast carrier. We have a new carrier design now that has rubber isolators on it. Very great design, very strong prop shafts. They're all made out of 1 3/4 120 wall tubing, so very thick. It's not gonna twist up on you like a factory prop shaft would. If you have an adjustable ball joint through Super ATV, any of our heavy duties, Super Duties, Keller ball joints are all gonna be adjustable. This is a Super Duty ball joint here, so it is one of them that is adjustable. Let's take something, clean it up a little bit, but I'm gonna show you how to adjust this on the machine. You're gonna find the split in the clip. You're just gonna move this clip all the way around to where it lines up with this pin. Now just take your pick, and you're just gonna pick this pin out of here. You don't have to pop it all the way out, you can just pop it out enough to where it'll spin. And then, as you've seen, I sprayed some lubricant on this. What you're gonna do is take a pair of needle nose, and you can actually adjust the tension on this ball joint. So before I even adjust any tension, usually what I do, especially a ball joint that's been in for a little bit, I wanna clean it out before I put it back together. And I also wanna pack some fresh grease in it. There you go. So this is where the ball is gonna ride in the ball joint. This is where your play is gonna come from. So you're gonna get at least 3 times the longevity out of a Super ATV ball joint by being able to tighten it down and adjust it to fit your needs than an OE that you just have to press out of the arm and press a new one in. But I like to run these down to where they're as tight as I can get them, and then I usually back them off a hole. So this is a needle greaser here. So you'd have your grease gun attached, and what you're gonna do is just push down. Now, a lot of times these are gonna get gummed up right here. You may have to take your pick and kind of work the ball around and clean out. As you can see, there's a bunch of sand and grit around this one. I'm just gonna push down on it a few times. Then you just take your Zerk, push in on it, pump it full. And honestly, I like to pump 2 to 3 pumps in these, depending on how much volume your grease gun is pushing out. If it pushes out a ton, maybe 1 pump. All right, so moving on to the rear. Obviously, again, every machine is gonna be a little bit different of where you're gonna locate your air filter, your clutch or your belt cover, belt box, and where your oil fill is gonna be. But those are the 3 things that we're focusing on now. We're gonna be checking the oil, we're gonna be checking the air filter, and then checking the clutches as well as the belt. First thing is the air filter. This one's conveniently placed right here on the driver's side. Other machines, they're not so convenient, but all of them are accessible. Then just grab your air filter, wiggle it around, and it'll come straight out. So this one you can already see as it's coming out, this thing's full of sand. But the way I like to check it, just take it and give it a smack. Looks like this one might have a little bit of oil in it too, so definitely not good. Definitely something we're gonna wanna check into with this having oil in it. It's not looking like it's in great shape, especially with it having oil on it. So we're probably just gonna go ahead and replace. So now what we're gonna do is go ahead and remove the outer belt cover here. 90% of the time, you're gonna have some sort of a vent on the front. So you're gonna have to remove that tube. I always like to just go ahead and loosen this one up. And as we pull the cover off, we can just slide it down over it. Most machines are gonna have an 8mm or 10mm securing it. Once the hardware's out, grab the cover, peel it off, slide it out of the way. So another awesome tool to have in the tool bag here, an assault belt tool. So what this does, it threads into the secondary clutch. Otherwise, you're gonna need some sort of specialty tool specifically on this X3. Not every machine requires this kind of tooling. So what you do is you slide that on there and it just cams over, just like so. And then you can release your belt. So what you're doing here is you're just rolling the belt right off of the secondary clutch. Just like so. So what we're looking for on this belt, and this belt is new, but you're looking for any kind of abnormal wear on the sides of the belt. You're looking for any heat marks, and then you're also looking at the clutches to see if there is any belt material that has worked its way into the clutching. I always like to blow these clutches out after every ride. I know that sounds pretty extensive, but it's pretty easy to take the clutch cover off and then just take an air blower and get in there and blow it. And you always want to install the belt to where you can read it. So we can read this just like right here. See the part number on it, see that it's a G-Boost, world's best belt, and it always installs that way no matter what. That way you never get confused on which way it's going. You always install it to where you can read it. What you're gonna be looking for is any grooving in the sheaves. So then also in the secondary, pretty common problem on these X3, specifically the older ones, is that the rollers in the secondary will fail and it'll cause the clutching not to function correctly. Also, if you do blow a belt, you wanna see if it has a hole in the clutch cover. It's another reason we've got this thing torn apart. We blew a belt on this. It was a stock belt. We were riding in the dunes and it actually blew a hole in our clutch cover. So we will have to change the clutch cover on this machine. If you need any clutch components, we offer a full line of G-Boost clutch kits, Rev 1 clutch kits, and G-Boost belts. So be sure to pop over to the website for that. So now, since we're back here, we're gonna go ahead and check the oil. We just changed the oil on this machine, but honestly, I like to change the oil at the beginning of every season, and if I ride a bunch, I may change it a couple times this season. So this is a Rack Boss 2.0 rack and pinion. We spoke about it a little bit previously as we were showing you guys how to check to see if it was loose, but a couple key features I wanna point out on this rack compared to OE is that it has a dual bushing design. So it has a bushing on this side as well as this side. So OEM racks, most of them are just gonna have one bushing. So what you're gonna have is some up and down movement on the rack shaft itself whenever it starts to wear. So as you're turning the tires with the tires on the ground, turning the steering wheel, you're gonna see that rack move up and down. That's what's gonna indicate if this rack is worn out or not. Also, we added a grease zerk. It's totally different from an OE rack. You're not gonna find a grease zerk in an OEM rack. Definitely a great upgrade option if you have a rack that's worn out. We have racks available for many makes and models now. Next thing I want to touch on is inner ball and sockets, or inner tie rod ends. So the OE inner tie rod end is not going to be adjustable, to whereas if you purchase a Super ATV inner ball and socket or a Super ATV tie rod kit, Rack Boss 2.0, they all come with this style. If this starts to get worn out, you start to get some slop in the steering, all you have to do is pop this clip off. You're just going to pop the clip off, and all that clip is doing is going over top of these 4 Allens. So kind of the same process with the ball joints how I showed you. I like to tighten these things down as tight as I can get them and then back them off 1 notch. So right there, I can't move this by hand. When you back it off that, just a slight turn, 1 notch. If you add grease into this, it's going to be even better, but just for demonstration purposes on how to adjust this and tighten it, we didn't throw any grease in there. So one of the most common items that need to be replaced on a machine, drive belt. This is something that you always need to have a spare with you, and you always need to have the correct tools in order to get it changed. We have a full line of G-Boost World's Best belts. Always check for wear on the belt. And then honestly, at the beginning of every season, it's not a bad idea to throw a new belt on. So moving on to clutches, we were talking about the sheaves, specifically the primary sheave. Now this is a brand new clutch. It's not gonna have any wear on it. A used clutch, what you're gonna see is a groove that rides right here in this position. And you're gonna see that from riding in high gear when you're under 30 miles an hour. So low gear all the way from 0 miles an hour to 30, high gear, anything 30 and above. You need to make sure you follow that, otherwise you are gonna groove the clutch, and it's also gonna put a bunch of heat on the belt. It's gonna cause premature failure on the belt, on the bearing itself. It's just gonna cause issues. Don't do it. So something that we didn't show you on this machine on how to change it, it's not the same on any of these machines, but it's a spark plug. This is something you need to change as well. So whenever you do pull a spark plug and you're inspecting it, which I highly advise that you do, you want to check the gap. So you're going to have a spark plug ring that you're going to be able to check the gap. You want to make sure you refer to your OEM service manual for that. Also, you're going to check the electrode and the porcelain to make sure it's not discolored. Make sure the spark plug's still good. If it's not, throw it away, install new ones. This is not something to mess around with. So we've walked you through the maintenance essentials on your machine before you take it out for a ride. Obviously, there's a few other things that you need to check. Make sure you're referring to the OEM service manual whenever you're checking any of these components that we've listed. And then whenever it's time to replace them, make sure to pop over to superatv.com, or you can give us a call at 855-743-3427. We appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.